Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. Today's story, What Kindness Can Do, starts out with the story of Peter Mutabazi. The vine came down on me so fast I did not have time to duck. It ripped across my right arm and burned like fire. "You worthless piece of," my father yelled as he swung the vine around like a bullwhip. I spun around to protect my face. "Don't you turn away from me." He grabbed my shoulder with his left hand, turned me around, and brought the vine back down across my neck and chest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my aunts, uncles, and cousins running out of their houses. They had come not to stop my father, but to watch. Nyabikoni was a very small village. This is what passed for entertainment. Peter Mutabazi joins me today to share the story of his life in Uganda, his brave escape from an abusive father at 10 years old, his subsequent life as a child living on the streets, struggling daily to stay alive, and the fortuitous meeting of a man who would change Peter's life, and in so doing change the lives of his siblings, their children, and all the children Peter now helps as a foster parent. Stay tuned for my talk with the author of Now I Am Known. Stories are our lives in language. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm excited for our future together of telling stories, evaluating our own stories, and lifting ourselves and others to greater places because of our control over our stories. This podcast is about empowerment and giving you, the listener, ideas to work with in making your stories work for you. Story power serves you best when you know how to use it. Peter believes that every child and every person deserves to be known. He has dedicated his life to advocating for children and youth. Peter grew up feeling unheard and unseen, which you will definitely hear and understand as he tells his story. He knows what it feels like to believe you do not matter at all in the world. And he also knows what it feels like to slowly come out of that one step at a time. So here's his story. Peter, welcome to the Love Your Story podcast.
Hello. Yes, I am absolutely thrilled to be with you today, Laurie. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your audience as well.
Absolutely. It is our honor. So we always start with your story, and it's such a moving story. So please take the bulk of our episode today telling us your story, and start with that little boy in Uganda at home. In the book, it starts out, "When I was 10 years old, I'd given up on life." Take us there.
Yes, when I was 10 years old, and I think as you grow older as a kid, the abuse changes in a different way. It's the same, but as you grow older, you understand it in a whole different way. And as growing up at 10, I think the most difficult was watching abuse come towards me and towards my mom as well. So I think at 10 years old, not being able to protect my mom, or watching my mom get most of the beating because she was advocating for us, that really made that difficult for me. So I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to leave. And I was done with life in some way. So for me, when my father sent me to go buy cigarettes that night and it was raining and I knew coming back I was going to get the beatings, I thought, this is the time I should give my life away. So for me, running away wasn't like I was looking for a better place. I think I thought if I should die, I should die in the hands of a stranger, not my father. So for me, I walked to the bus station and I said, hey, of all these buses, which one goes the farthest? One, I asked because I knew if my father found me, he'll kill me. But on the other end, I thought if I should die, I never want him to have the joy of burying me. So that was the whole reason why I asked the lady, which one goes the farthest? And the lady showed me, and I ran away and I ended up in Kampala. But that night, it was more of life for me to now should be the end, that I should not watch my mother or my siblings hear the abuse that we about to hear tonight. And I'm not going to give the joy to my father to do so. So that was the reason why that night at 10 years old, I thought I am done living. And that's why I went away.
I can't imagine at 10 years old having those kind of feelings, and also having the courage to hop on a bus and travel and run for your life, really. Like, that's incredible. Tell us a little bit about where you're coming from. Tell us about Uganda and your village and your mom and your family. Kind of what was that home base like?
I grew up in a small village, where everyone around me was poor. Everyone was poor. So it wasn't something where you said, well, maybe it's us who are feeling the pain of not having food. It was everyone. So there wasn't an example to say, maybe I want to be like family number B. No, you're all poor. All the kids went to fetch water 3 miles away. All the kids went to the garden. All the kids never had shoes. All the kids had one pair of clothes. And that was my background as a kid. I'd grown up from a home where no one ever told me to dream. No one ever said, hey, Peter, one day you can be something. No, it's hard for a mother. If they can't feed you for a night, how do they tell you to really dream in some way? But also, as we get older, we get to know the meaning of our names. My last name is Habyarimana, which means a gift given to us by God. And I understood the way I got that name was because for every 100 children were born in my village, 60 would die before the age of 2. So my mother was afraid to give me a name until when I made it 2. So she said, well, he survived. So I'm going to call him, he's a gift or he's a produce given to me by my God. So my name gives me the background of how miserable and how lucky I was even to make it a 2. So from the get-go, that's all I knew, misery. There was never food. There was never peace. There was no glimpse of hope. There wasn't anything that can say, I look forward to seeing tomorrow. None. There was no food. You worked so hard. At the age of 4, I was able to go fetch 3 miles away. At the age of 4, I was able to dig and help in the garden. At the age of 4, so at the age of 4, I could do things for what a 15-year-old in the United States can do. And so for me, there wasn't really any joy. And that was my background as a kid, where I just day to day just went, you dreamed to see today, you never thought about tomorrow, because today was hard enough that you're like, okay, I'll stick today. If we have no meal today, I'm not sure there can be a meal tomorrow. So that is really the little background of what my life was. And as I said, everyone around me was poor. So it kind of felt like we are all in the same boat, or we all have no hope. All the kids, we went to fetch water the same way, and that is a little bit of my background.
That mortality rate is just staggering. That's incredible. And I'm assuming that probably more died before they reached 18 of starvation and other things. It sounds like it was incredibly rough.
Absolutely, and malaria too. So what killed the kids was mostly malaria. So think of it, malaria is not really a bad disease, but when you're hungry, when you haven't eaten for days, when you're dehydrated, when you're malnourished, to have malaria, it would take you within 24 hours. Again, because your body is too weak to really fight this simple virus.
Sure.
And that's why most kids will die. Or that's why most moms will lose their kids before they are born, because they'll get malaria and they don't know what to do, and they will lose their kids.
So tell me about your relationship with your dad then. Let's set that foundation, because that's really important and is going to come out big when we get into part 2 of my discussion with you. So what was that relationship like?
So from the get-go, as I could understand at the age of 2, like I cannot remember to this day my father holding me, my father speaking words of kindness to me, or to hear anything positive out of my father, either towards me or towards my mom. I grew up at the age of 4. If my father was sitting in the living room, you made sure you look for another way to get in the house so you didn't see eye to eye. Until when I was 30, like I'm not sure I ever looked in my dad's eyes or sat next to him because of who he was, just the fear, the abuse, his words. I never had one kind word from my dad. Like kids, we do so much things to please our dads or our moms. You go fetch water, you come back and you say, my dad is going to say, well, good job, son. No. Your father came and said, you're useless, you're garbage, you'll never amount to anything. I wish you were never born so I don't have to feed you. Those are the things you had every day from your father, But if the beating weren't coming towards you, it was coming to your little brother. If it wasn't your little brother, it was your mom. So there was a constant commotion of abuse, either verbally or physically. That's all I know about my father, someone that I never from as little as I can remember, wanted to be around. If he was at home, you're tense, you're afraid, you're worried. What is he gonna do? And if he didn't do anything, is what what came out of his mouth that I knew of my father. Not in any fatherly way that I understand now. But I really never was, as I said, he never held me. He never said any kind words. I could never even dare being 5 feet from him, So that's the kind of father that I really knew. And he didn't enjoy being home. So he worked. So he would go work. He comes home for an hour. He goes to drink. He comes at 3 a.m. The beatings, the fighting. So he wasn't, I can't say he's a man who wanted to be at his home all the time. He just worked and drank, is all I knew.
So on that fateful night, you said that making the choice to run from your father that night, quote, was my first step toward taking power over my own life, unquote. And as you got off that bus, well, your dad asked you to go get cigarettes. You realize that no matter what happens, you're running out there in the rain, no shoes, trying to go get him his cigarettes. And when you get back, you're going to get beat because either it took too long or it didn't take long enough or whatever it is. So you make that choice you talked about earlier of, I'm going to run. I'm going to take off out of here at 10 years old. And you get on this bus and you say, quote, a sense of freedom and power that I had survived a nightmare. Catching the bus to Kampala was my ticket to hope. And it was the beginning of learning to see myself differently. Take us to that bus ride and what you remember from that part of your story. How does this different you start opening up?
So I'd never been on a bus, again, it was my decision to run away. So the decision to run away and actually do it, that was another thing. So once I walked, which was about 5 miles away from my home to the bus station. So I walked, it was 3 a.m, fearful of wild dogs, fearful of someone would harm me. So once I go to the bus station and I sat on it, they didn't charge the money until halfway the journey. So I knew, okay, I'm safe. So getting on and the bus starting to move, that's when I began to realize, like, wait a minute, I have power. I have power to make a decision about my own life, that I have power in some way to make the way in some way that I will never let my father do this again. The bravery that I took to run away, that I think what encouraged me to say, you know what, I have that. Even when I knew I was heading to death, it was more of it's on my call, it's my decision. I
on my terms, yeah.
It's on my terms, like it's not my father's term. So there was that freedom of, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care if my life ended. Yes, but it was on my terms. And so being on that bus, that's I think when I began to realize, like, wait a minute, there's power in when you decide to make these decisions for yourself. And I could see the impact that it was going to impact me in a positive way or negative way, but also to those that I had left behind. I think my mother, I thought, now my mom is going to worry. Now my mom is going to worry where is my son. But at the same time, that I also knew that I needed to run. That's all I could think about. There wasn't anything else that I could think through. And so for me, getting on the bus was scary, and as we drove, as a little boy, I thought I had the power to stop the bus. So every time it would stop to get people off or to get people on, I would push so hard because in my head, I thought I have the power to make it move. Because I felt like I had the power to move away, to run away, that I can make the bus move. And as a
Look at your powerful spirit. I love that. This little boy trying to take the power to just make things happen. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Our traumas or any unkind learning environments that we have, certainly there's a space of stunted emotional development, and our capacity to see ourselves as we truly are becomes very, very twisted. You said, quote, we carry the injustices throughout our lives, never achieving our full potential. We settle for surviving, unquote. Tell me a little bit about what you meant by that.
Well, I think for me, all my life, all I could think about survive. How do I survive tonight from the abuse from my father? How do I survive from tonight from the lack of food. How do I survive the poverty? So all my life was what do I survive? It wasn't when, what. It was just everything around you that I really had to learn to survive. That until I moved away, until I began to see greater hope, then I was like, wait a minute, the survival mode it wasn't helping me or leading me to anywhere. It's all I could do. So it would make me stunted in some way that the food is all I could think about, though I could have gone to school and done well in school. Well, I didn't have those opportunities, but I don't think I would have survived ever done well in school when I knew I was coming home to an empty stomach, to a place I was going to go with no meal. That still my focus would have been a meal that I think I would have forgotten or would not have concentrated on my school. So yes, I think when you lack hope, when you're poverty, or when you in a traumatic world, you think of the basic survival mode, and there's nothing else you can think about. So it's not easy to see hope. It's not easy to see the future. You're thinking in the moment, how do I survive now? And I think that's where the message was coming from, because I saw, how lost I was.
Sure. And, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it talks about, it has different levels of needs that we have that have to be fulfilled before we can move to the next level. And of course, shelter and food and those basic things is that primary level before we can move to even comprehending or understanding, having the next need filled. We have to have that one. So I think it's really crucial to your story, because even as you get off the bus, you go all the way to the end of the bus line, you get off the bus, and then here you are as a 10-year-old, and we'll start at this point in the story again. I'll have you pick up here, but you're still in a place of survival. You join this group, this gang of little boys who are trying to survive. And again, everything is focused on trying to get enough food to just make it through the day, right? And this mindset of being there, so many of us have no comprehension of what that would be, because so many of us don't have to struggle or live with that. And that makes your story you're taking us to a world that we luckily are not familiar with. But take us to getting off the bus and meeting these kids and the mindset that you had in that part.
So I had never been 20 miles away. So here I am 500 kilometers away, to a city. They spoke different language. There was so much commotion. It was a city where everything was just vibrant and moving and chaotic in a way. So arriving there, that was traumatic enough to say, oh, Lord, what am I going to do? So as I stayed on the bus trying to figure out what's my next step, I saw a little boy who was stealing food. He would help people on the bus, but leave the food behind. So he came back to pick up the food he had left behind, and he looked in my eyes and he's like, you are only one on the bus, meaning you're lost. So come, let's go. From the get-go, he really embraced me and brought me in. Remember, all my life, I think I had been trained to learn to survival mode. That's all I knew. So joining the street, it wasn't so much of a jump. It was different in abuse, but it was the same. How do we survive today? So they thought, they really taught me how to steal food, how to target people. What kind of food do I have to steal? You don't have to steal meat if you can't cook it. We only steal what we can roast or cook right away, like cassava, like a banana, like a tomato. You can eat it. And that's how they really taught me. But also they taught me on how to survive among there were more than 2,000 kids on the streets of Kampala, and some were dangerous kids. And so we had to learn about who's safe among us. And the age-mate is really what helped us. Age-mate or the background of where we came from really united us or made us, kind of really work together. So I was in a group of 15 to 20 kids who were all the same age, between 10 and 15. And that's became our lives on really learning how to survive. I learned to be idle is dangerous. Being idle, that means someone can harm you. If a police came, they will take you, or someone will pour on you acid, or someone will run over you. So you kind of had to learn, if I can keep moving, I'll be safe. So right away, I had to learn a whole different living of surviving,
Why would people pour acid on you?
Well, people were mean and angry, they didn't really care about street kids. The street kids were treated more like stray animals. Think of how you treat a stray animal. That's how they would treat us. So if someone was angry and they're, I don't know, have hot cold, they would just throw it anywhere. And if their kids sleeping under, that came over you. And I lost some of my friends that I had to bury, ourselves because they died of something, because someone caused harm on them. And it wasn't a world that you can report. It wasn't a world that you can say, no, you kind of really knew how to survive. And that became my world. At home, I think I survived on 24 hours or 12 hours. On the streets, I learned how to survive on an hourly basis. So that was the difference, because every hour I had to figure out, am I safe? Remember, we're street kids, so we'd sleep in the garbage. In the garbage is where, I don't know if you've been at third world countries, where they heap garbage, heaps and heaps and thousands of tons of garbage, where there's burning, there are dogs, and that was a safe place to go if you needed rest. But think of it, it's like you're going to sleep in the sewer just so you can find safety, But also we'll go to sewer canal, which is in the middle of the city, and then we go under, that's where we'll hide just so we can have a little piece of life. And that became our life. So for me, I mean, I had to learn to survive on every hour, because I wasn't guaranteed the next hour.
And this was your life for 5 years, right?
Correct. From 10 to 16 to 15 years.
Wow. So let's talk about how you moved out of that. How did you, well, you went and lived with your aunt first, right? Was that before James, or?
Yes. So while on the streets, I've been there for about 2 years. Then, someone saw me and told my aunt, who was, lived in a prostitute world, a place with a slum area where it was more chaos than on the streets. And so he invited me to go stay. And I thought, I can go. So then I went to live with them for about 3 or 6 months. And then I went back on the streets.
Okay. So one of the things I loved in your book, after living with your aunt and then choosing to live or choosing to leave, you said, quote, "From these days, I learned that finding goodness and happiness takes a lot of attempts. Try, fail, try again and again and again for as long as it takes. If we keep fighting, we will journey to a better place. Even the process of trying and saying, 'I will,' guides us to recognize strength and goodness," unquote. I loved when you said this, because your spirit is so indomitable. The things that you have come up against, and even this idea that, you had been given a home now, somebody to take you off the street to live with your aunt, but it was so hard and brought back bad memories because of the abuse to the women around you, that type of thing. What I started thinking was how beautiful it was that you could be in a place and just realize, okay, I get to try in a different way to be happy. And the thing that I thought about with social media and us in the United States right now, how often, especially when we compare our real lives to things that are portrayed in social media, that people feel if they aren't in a place of happiness and joy at every moment, that they're failing or their life is growing wrong. And that's where the suicide rates start skyrocketing. I also think there's power in acknowledgement that we get to choose joy every day, that we get to choose happiness, that we get to fight for it, that we work for it. And so I really loved that about this place you're in, because you're just in the lowest and most difficult of places, but you can choose in this time of struggle to say, I'm going to learn something from this. And I thought that was fantastic, Peter.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember all my life was every day you had to learn, how do I avoid abuse from my dad? Every day you had to learn a different way on how do I make it today? And on the streets in Kampala, the same thing. So for me, along life as I grew older, I had to learn, hey, today I was abused by a woman because she abused me sexually. Well, tomorrow I'm not going to let that happen, but tomorrow it's going to be something else, So every time something happened, I looked for another way I can find glimpse of hope, Yes, I went to live with my aunt. Yes, first few weeks it was wonderful, but later it became hell, and I went back on the streets. But I didn't give up on life, I should end it today. No, I think I found in every challenge, there was another way I can find a little glimpse of hope the next day, that I don't have to feel the same pain that I felt yesterday.
You're a fighter. Yes, you're a fighter. So take us to the story about James. When did you meet James? And what did he do for you? Because this is the real catalyst. This James is the one that we're talking about when we talk about what kindness can do. James is this beautiful being who changes your life. So tell us about him.
Well, but that did start in a good way. So remember, as street kids, we learned who to steal from, who can afford food. So if you're wearing glasses, that means you can afford food. You buy food, so we can steal food from you. If you're wearing khakis and shoes and you speak English, those are the qualifications that we looked for to food from. So for me, I saw a man who was wearing khakis, glasses, and I thought, I am going to steal from this guy. So I followed him. So it wasn't like there was anything good about him. No, I just followed him. And as soon as he bought the food, I carried, I said, where's your car? I'll take it. And he's like, wait, please put my food down. And I was like, oh no, this one is becoming difficult. So, but before I could do so, he said, what's your name? I had lived on the streets for 4.5 years. No one had ever at some point said, what is your name, little boy? No. So by him asking me my name, that made me want to run away. Remember, for every kindness on the streets came with abuse. So because he was kind, or he was trying to be kind and nice, for me, that was a radar run for your life. So he asked my name. I said, my name is Peter, just Peter. And I walked away. I kind of stepped back because I thought he's about to do something harmful. And so he said, yeah, you can help me. And I took it to his car. And before I could steal something, he said, hey, here's something to eat for you. And that made me even run farther away because remember, every kindness came with abuse. So for us, just because you're kind didn't mean you're really nice. That means abuse will follow. So that was what I was reading. So I walked away so quickly because I was afraid he's going to harm me because he gave me food. So I was waiting for the worst part. And then I saw him the next week. He called me by my name, which really made it special because it was more like hearing my mother say, Peter, where are you? Peter, where are you? For him, naming me by name really was special in a way. But at the same time, I radar to run for my life, but he would always give me food and I would go away, And so finally, I kind of learned the pattern. He comes on Monday, he comes between, 5 and 7. He always parks here. He always buys 1, 2, 3, 4. So on Monday, I knew I don't have to steal. I'm going to have this human being that knows my name. And 2, that will give me food without having to hustle. So he did that for 1 year and a half. So for 1 year and a half, he would always come to and I would get a meal. So not only did I trust him, but it took me a while to trust him, but he didn't give up, And I think that's the wrong thing that we do with people. We say, well, I gave you food. Why don't you trust me? Well, no, there's so much baggage about me that you need to pull the layers and the layers. And I need to trust you that you're good. As I said, kindness to most of us who've gone through trauma doesn't mean anything good. It means danger. And until, 1 year and a half, he said, Peter, would you love to go to school? And I was like, you a fool. Why would you want to go to school? I'm a street kid. I smell, I'm dirty, I'm garbage. My father told me I'll never amount to anything. See, you don't look at me. School is for people who are special, who dream, who have a hope, who have a home. I am none of that. So that's why I said no, and he didn't give up. So later he came back and instead of saying, would you like to go to school? He said, Peter, if you go to school, there'll be lunch, dinner, and breakfast. Remember, he spoke my language. My whole world of survival every day was food. So he put school and included school in it. He put school and included food in it. And That's why I went. So for me, I went for food. I didn't go for school, So it's amazing. But again, he had to earn my trust. He fed me for 1 year and a half. And that's what helped me to truly trust him first.
And then his family took you in and you started to shift this idea of, you said, James saw in me something I was incapable of seeing in myself. And this was where you really start to shift and think, I'm somebody, right? What are the other things he offered you as he brought you in?
So he put me to school. He bought me school shoes. I had never had a pair of shoes before. And he brought me several clothes. But when he put me in school, it was a boarding school. So then I began to see kids who, looked like me, kids who were, surviving and doing well in school. So I began to see myself like, wait a minute, I'm not just a street kid. This person sees me and knows me, and he's put me in a place where people look normal, in some way. So I had to learn a few steps of what normalcy was. That was meaning wearing clothes, taking a shower, being among other kids, not having to steal. Trust me, every time they went to class, I went through their stuff because I wanted to steal it. But then I would think about at the end before I take it. I'm like, wait a minute, a food. If lunch comes, I'm going to miss it. So I'm not going to take it. So it was small little steps that really kind of helped me go through, and then a few months later, he invited me in his home. And then I saw his home and I saw how he treated his family and I saw how his kids really treated me. So now not only did I see hope, but I began to see something I would dream to be. I want to be like this man. If there's a good dad this is my example of a dad. So now he began to be my idol because now I had taken a few steps in my own life to begin see the glimpse of hope that I'd never seen before.
That vision of hope and just what you were capable of, shifting that whole mindset was probably the greatest gift he gave you. What we focus on expands. When you were able to focus on positive things, of thinking of yourself in a different way, you got different outcomes, right?
Correct. Yes. So what helped me was like, wait a minute. So if I don't beat someone, they're going to keep giving me food. So that's positive one, Then positive two, if I can sleep on the bed, because at first I was sleep on the floor, but I was like, well, I can sleep on bed as well and wear a uniform. So that means the kids will include me in their games, If I show up at a football game, the kids will. So I began to see where people will let me in, and then I went to class. The teacher didn't say you smell or go back. He said, yeah, Peter, how can I help you? And it's like, well, you want to help me? So I began to see people draw towards me. And now I began to say, I'm going to take that. I'm not going to take a step back, but I'm going to take a step forward, But think for me, the turning point was where I began to see the words of my father, because my father said, you never amount to anything. You're garbage. I wish you never born, so I have no to feed you. Now I began to turn them around, say, wait a minute, this man never wanted the best for me. But I think there's more about me that I never knew, So I began to say, the words from my father are not true, and are not true if I choose to not listen to them, because those will come back in my mind. I say, no. And also I began to realize that if I go back, I was giving a chance for my father to win. In some way, it was like a competition with my father mentally, like, if I go back, then he's winning because he said I will never amount to anything. But this person has seen the best in me. So if I move forward, I am winning to what he thought of me. So those are the things that really began to help me, in some way, helped me to look back of the challenge that I had to go through, the voices, and then maintain them, in some way, own them and maintain them. And when they showed up, I knew how to say, no, not today. Not today, not today. And that's really what helped me to move one step at a time. And then I began to see that I was smart in school because I would get F. And then the teachers would say, Peter, good job. And every time I got a D, they're like, well, job, Peter. And then I said, if they say, well, Peter, I should get a C. And then a C, I should get an A. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm smart, And it's through that really the voice of my father saying, no, I will not let you take me back. I own my future and I will not let you destroy what is ahead of me.
I love your fighting spirit. And I also love just the wisdom in such a young kid to be able to say, I don't have to entertain that thought anymore. I can think better of myself. That's wonderful. You said, quote, when James saw the good in me, I wasn't very good at doing that myself. Not just with myself, but with everyone. I expected the worst in people, and I usually managed to find it. Even today, I must intentionally choose to look beyond behaviors and external circumstances and see the humanity within. I think this goes back to what we were talking about with what we focus on expands. If we look at the meanness in people, that's going to get big for us. If we look at the spaces of humanity with grace and love, that's going to get bigger for us. So let's talk about how we stop seeing ourselves through the lens of the past, because we all make mistakes and we all go through difficult things. Every story is different, but that's always a component of it. And because the things we've been through, Love Your Story is about reframing our story so that we can love the things that have happened to us from a place of acceptance and a place of learning from them, right? And everybody has to do that because everybody has rough patches. So we also have to figure out, how do we see ourselves without just looking through that lens of the things that we've been through or the difficult things that have happened or the bad choices we've made. What have you learned about that? How do we do that?
Well, this is gonna make me cry. I think it had to start with me, that you have this is a thief boy. This is a kid who had no glimpse of hope. This is a kid who he lived just to survive for a day, and all he thought about was food. But yet, when he got to see me, he didn't see that he saw a kid with the most amazing, smart, brave, kind, that I never thought I had, because no one ever saw that to me. And I think for me, that really helped me to see myself in the best way that I didn't know. Because he taught me what bravery means. Like he said, Peter, I can never survive for one day on the streets of Kampala. For you to survive for 5 years, you're so brave,
Yeah, absolutely. It's unthinkable.
That what I saw as negative, he used them as good to show me, like, hey, you're chosen and you're gift. And that really helped me to see myself like, oh, wait a minute, I tend to sometimes just to see the worst in me, but hear the good things that I didn't see. And I think that's for me what helped me. That everyone, we have the good part and we have the bad part. And sometimes we focus only on the bad part and forget the good one. And that for me, that's what helped me excel in life, do well in school, learn to behave well, learn to trust people that I never trusted before, because he showed me first. It began with me, he saw the best in me. How can I not see the best in others? He trusted me, think of it. He brought a kid from the street and he brought him to live with his family,
Yeah.
That he could have said, man, this kid is going to do 1 to 3 to my family, but I'm not going to. But he let me. And the same, I have to do the same. And I think that's why I'm a foster parent, that I will embrace every child that comes in, because it was done to me first. And I think that helps each one of us to look through and say, yes, you're going through a patch in your marriage, but to look back and say, but my parents, my best friend always saw the best in me, and lean on that and lean on what people saw the best in you, then really focus on that that takes you down. And I think that's where we go, not we go wrong, but where the worst is the best we see in ourselves. But I'm trying for me to say.
Yeah, that's where the work has to be done. We have to consciously shift, like you say, and choose not to focus on, and this is where reframing happens too. You can take something like he did with you, the dirtiness, the strength, the wiliness of being on the street, but he twists it and sees out of it your courage, your longevity, your fight, all of that stuff that was there for you. And you see that differently. But see, I think that the ability to reframe and to make the choice like you did, to let that shift happen instead of being stuck in the past, the lenses of the past that have either been really dark or really difficult because of what other people have said or how we've perceived things, that restructuring of, I'm willing to accept my beauty. I'm willing to accept this different way of looking at it. And that's a choice.
Exactly. And also to see that whoever said things bad to you or abused you, they never wanted the best for you. So to stay in that place where they always wanted it to be, in some way you're giving them a win. For me, I didn't want to give that win to my father, but I said, he always wanted me to fail. So for me, failing is somehow affirming to what he always thought of me. So I'm not gonna give
You're
that
fighting
opportunity.
Back.
Yes, I'm gonna use this. And I excelled in school, not because I was smart, but I had to just say, Peter, you are amazing what you do. I was like, oh, really? So you mean I can get a B? And that really helped me to always look at what I see now and help me how use it as a foundation and help me for the next. You could be married and you've gone through divorce for 10 years, you're miserable. And I say you're brave that you stayed for 10 years and you survived and you're out of it. To look at it and say, how many more can I survive and how many more can I come alongside because I beat the odds of this marriage? And that's for me what helped me to shift rather than see my past as so much of a negative, but see it as a foundation to help me do better. Because I know what it means to go home hungry. No, I don't want to go hungry. I know how to use mean words towards someone. I never want to use the same towards my kids or anyone because I know how it hurt me because I had that from my father. So take lessons from what you've learned and use them as a foundation to reframe your future, to reframe how you think, to reframe what you think is bad. Say, wow, I'm brave that I go to manage and go through this boss. Wow, and on the other end, and say, how many more bring on any boss? I'm gonna maintain and my joy because I've learned how to see it. I've learned how to not let it also take my future.
In your book, which, by the way, I highly recommend for everybody, it's just such a good book, really well written, and you get into his whole life story. You get the details of this. You have a chapter in there called What Kindness Can Do. And since that's the whole focus of this, share your overall thoughts on this idea. What did kindness do for you?
Well, for me, kindness really, again, it was from a stranger who didn't know who I was, but it turned everything around me. It gave me hope. It also improved my life for my family as well. Not only did I succeed in school, but my entire family did well. My all siblings, 5 of them, have gone through university and done well. Not because they were smart, but through the kindness of one man that changed my life, that has gone to change my entire family. I've helped more than 100,000 kids sponsored to say, using my story, using it for good rather than seeing it in a negative way. So through the kindness of one kindness of one human being, to see the ripple effect it's really done along the way, giving me hope, giving me joy, giving me faith, giving me a reason to live. And the best of all, made me the best dad I can be. I'm not a good dad because I have resources. I have a dad because someone showed me what a father ought to be through kindness of one.
Isn't that incredible? And the reason that your siblings all got to go through school was because as you went through school and had resources, you supported them in going through school, right?
Right, because I knew I could not take them away from abuse, but I can give them one thing that I was given, education. But also, he made me the example. I think they looked and said, if Peter can do it from the abuse from dad as a street kid and be a student and exceed, we can also do too. So he set an example for me that became an ideal example for my siblings as well, through the kindness of just one man.
I know, isn't that incredible? And that's what I hope this podcast does, is makes each of us stop and think, what can I do in the world that shows kindness in a way that has the potential for that type of domino effect? Because it starts small and can build and can do so much. So you work now as a foster. Well, it's a way of life, I guess, but you provide foster care for children to give them safe places to grow up. And you said, quote, when a foster child moves from an abusive situation to a peaceful household, they feel like they've landed on an alien planet. When you find yourself in that place, all you want to do is go back to a familiar place, even if that home is hell. Hurting people do not deserve judgment. They need understanding. They need patience. They need love. They need grace, unquote. And I think what you've termed there in that statement is, this is kindness. When you give patience and love and grace and not judgment, you embrace and bring people into good spaces. This is kindness. Any final thoughts about how this changes life for a person, ways that we can do it? How have you noticed this affecting your work in foster care with your children?
Well, in life, we all have a box on who we want to befriend or who we want to be a friend. We have a box, and I think until we destroy those boundaries, that we see the best in people. Because I want someone who's only kind. I want a kid who doesn't cry, who doesn't curse me. That's my box. but having that box, basically, I get to miss out on the challenge of that child. They're not seeing me or living that box that I have. They come from a different box. For me to let go of my own box and see the best in others, the best way I can be a dad, the best way I can understand. I want to be heard, and I can speak English, I can speak kindly, but to some of our kids, they don't know what that means. Cursing me, and yelling, and sometimes it's the best way to tell me how they feel. They're saying, I miss my mom, I'm angry, and I'm in the wrong place, and I miss what I used to be. For me, to not be in the middle of that, to me, that's a child telling me what they feel. And for me to be able to put myself aside and say, what I'm hearing, though it is not what I would like to say or hear, it's not really about me. This kid is talking to me in the ways that he understands and he feels, and I have to accept and love on them. And I think that is the way we really get to love people. When we take away our boundaries, our box on how we see people, and include others. Moms, I have one mom who hated me. She hated me in every way, shape, form. And here's why she hated me. I was a Black man who was taking care of her 3 little ones. And every time I go to see her, she would just didn't want to see me. But I kept pursuing her. And finally she said, Peter, I have a confession. I was told as a dad and mom from a white community that Black people were bad people. That's all I knew. And seeing you being the best dad to my kids, I could not understand because I was still holding on what I was told. Of all people who taught me, the Black people, no one showed up for my kids, but you did, and you've showed me the bad, the bad picture of what I was told within my family. And they're the best family, and they got to have their kids back. And I said that my whole joy is to be there so you can have your kids back, not to judge you, but come alongside and give you resources. And you can see how that be the racial differences, like she saw the best in me, and in some way I helped her to see the racial bias she had towards me. And now we're like the best buddies. But I otherwise I would have missed out on being friends to their kids for the rest of their lives. But I had to really put that aside and see the best in them.
Oh, you're so smart. Love begets love, right? Like if you can be there patiently and not judgmentally with people, you're going to get to all kinds of places that you just would never dream of.
Yes.
Your story's so awesome, Peter. Tell us about where people can find you. Tell us about your book and your current work and where they can order it.
Well, yeah. So my job is I want to be a full-time dad. I want to foster 20 kids if I could, foster more 20 kids, adopt 50 of them. But also my whole joy is to be an advocate for children, to speak on their behalf, to make sure they are seen, heard, and known. Well, you can find my book anywhere, in any store in the world, in any bookstore, Target, Walmart, Amazon. You can also order it through my website, Now I'm Known. Now I'm Known is the name of my book, because my whole idea is to make every child seen, heard, and known, because someone made me known when no one knew who I was. And that's the whole idea of Now I'm Known, that we can make each other's known as well. So yes, also you can find me on social media, Posted Dad Flipper. Well, I flip houses, not children. So you can find me at Posted Dad Flipper. But Now I'm Known on YouTube, Now I'm Known on TikTok, and I love to show the positive lives of the kids who go through the most difficult. That's my joy. That's what I live for.
Thank you for being on the show. This is a 2-part series. So join us next week. We are going to be talking about what hate can do. And while this sounds like a really negative title, but as we continue on with Peter's story, there is a really insightful and progressive space in his story where this is just it's an insightful moment. It's a light bulb moment for him. So tune in for part 2 in 2 weeks, and we'll take you there. So Peter, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Laurie, for having me here.
Peter's story speaks for itself. What can kindness do? It can change an entire life, and in so doing, change many, many more lives. Let's look for places where we can share that kind of kindness, where we can be the patient, the loving, just going the extra mile in those spaces. As we close today's show, let's think about where we can give a little more kindness, where we can give grace and patience and forgiveness. That's going to look a little different for every one of us, but take a moment, if you will, identify what that means for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those who have left reviews for the show. I'd like to share one this week from Sam Woo Woo is his name. And the title is This Podcast Rocks. Quote, I love this podcast. It forever changed my life. One of the hottest upcoming podcasts, and everyone should listen. Unquote. Honest, I didn't write that. Appreciate the review and appreciate for everyone that's listening. It just takes a second to scroll to the bottom of your app and leave a review, and I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't left a review, it's super easy. Have a great day. Live with intention, and we will see you for the second part of Peter's story.